So we're back. Happy to be joined by John Beck, the second-round pick of the Miami Dolphins in 2007. And now he's moved on post-career to run a very reputable, very popular quarterback tutorial service, 3DQB, with Adam Dado and Taylor Kelly in Southern California. And the list of quarterbacks that are using 3DQB is huge. But for the purposes of our session today, John, we'll talk about some of the quarterbacks you're tutoring to prepare for this draft. Obviously, Zach Wilson, the Brigham Young quarterback. In addition, you've worked with Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback. He has his second pro day on Wednesday of this week. That's when this podcast will air. And then on Monday, next Monday, the second pro day for the North Dakota State quarterback, who I think is just, an absolutely kind of fascinating quarterback. And I think that right now, so many people, we are going to get to all of the quarterbacks in a moment, but I think so many people right now are so concerned and so interested with all of your quarterbacks, but probably no more. There's no quarterback that people are more interested in than Trey Lance of North Dakota State. So we'll get a good discussion going on all three of your quarterbacks. But I think, first of all, what really interests me about your career is people really forget that 14 years ago, you were in the shoes of a lot of these young kids. You were a prime quarterback prospect out of Brigham Young. You got picked 40th in the draft that year by the Miami Dolphins, who had just finished a 2-year run with Nick Saban. And so they were wiping the slate clean. And on the day of that draft, I don't know what you thought, but I thought, hey, John Beck, they got their quarterback of the future. So you've got a really interesting story about how that went. And I'd love our listeners to hear it.
Well, you're right. That's how I felt as well. When I got selected, it was a really exciting day in my life. All those years of hard work from a kid all the way up, through college, with that journey that all quarterbacks go on, right? It's that dream that you set when you're a little boy saying, I want to play in the NFL someday. And it's a really cool and special moment when you have that dream realized and you get to hear your name called, or you're on the phone with the head coach and the general manager. And they basically are saying, we're picking you to be our guy. It was exciting. The first time I went down to Miami, I flew there right after I got drafted. They sit you down. You go through the whole media blitz with everybody. The coaches talk to you, and you walk in the head coach's office, and he said, I'm really pumped to get you. This is going to be an exciting thing. There's a lot of hard work ahead, but we believe you can do it. Those are all exciting things. The reality of the situation is, and I really try to get this message across to all the quarterbacks that I train through this process, is that you do not know the situation that you're going into, and you don't get to pick the situation you're going into. And although I was extremely excited to be a part of the Miami Dolphins, excited for the prospects of being the starting quarterback for the future there, that's not the reality of what took place. There were a lot of difficult times throughout that year. We had a starter in Trent Green that got injured. Cleo Lemon came in. Then we're 0-9 or 0-10. I become the starter. That's the reality of the NFL.
But the great part of that story that you once told me is that, they told you, hey, listen, you're going to sit this year. And then, you're going to just absorb everything this year.
Right.
And then the roof caves in, and all of a sudden you're part of the caving.
That is exactly true. Yeah, I can remember, they said, we're going to put you, their exact words were, we believe that the Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers plan is the best plan for a quarterback to develop in this league. You need time to learn our offense. You need an adjustment period to adjust to the NFL game and to play the way that we want the quarterback to play. And so our plan is the exact words were Phillip Rivers and Aaron Rodgers' plan. And we don't see you having to play this year. Trent Green is our guy. That's why we brought him here. We don't know what year 2 looks like, but this is the plan. And you're right. It went from a plan. And of course, as a quarterback that's, played, hey, I always got to prepare like I'm the starter. It's not like I slacked at all, or I wasn't still going through my reviews or taking tape home. I still did all those things. But yeah, all of a sudden, the season just starts looking a little bit different each and every week. And with each loss that keeps building up and mounting, and you have the player run meetings, and then the coach sits everybody down. How are we going to, turn this ship around? And then your starting quarterback gets injured and then he's not coming back for the year. I mean, all those things just start happening. And then players that were traded away that were, Wes Welker was traded for a draft pick that year. Chris Chambers was traded for a draft pick that year. Two really key weapons from the season before are no longer on the team. And it's for the future, but you're wondering, what does the future hold? And looking back now, it's definitely a wild experience. Like in that moment, I was just a naive rookie in the NFL with eyes wide open, just wondering, is this normal? But that's how it goes sometimes.
The thing I thought, one of the things that, at least, when we have had discussions about this, I think the fact that you're able to have the kind of perspective that you can say to a young quarterback, that essentially you have no idea and you have no choice about what you're getting into. And, we'll talk about Zach Wilson here, but see, I really wonder, Zach Wilson, he's a kid who grew up in this semi-small town in Utah, Draper, Utah. A big event for him as a kid was going with the family to see the Utah Utes and, to go see a football game. And they had tickets on the 50-yard line. And then, when he goes to college, he goes to BYU. So he's been in this sort of Utah bubble in his life. And he grew up there. He went to high school there, went to college there. And now he's going 2,200 miles away to a place where on the back pages of the tabloids, they're already screaming, Broadway Zach. And hey, Zach Wilson, no pressure. They just want you to be the next Joe Namath. And by the way, they've drafted about 30 quarterbacks since Joe Namath, and none of them have worked. So good luck. But how do you handle that? And let's use Zach Wilson as an example, but how do you talk to him about the weight of expectations?
I think all quarterbacks in the NFL have to deal with expectations. I think that there are some cities, some media markets that place more of those expectations and pressures on the quarterback than others. I believe there's organizations, whether it's a New York organization or whether it's like my situation in Miami, where when you walk in the building, there's two gigantic pictures of Dan Marino and Bob Greasy. And what's Miami trying to do? They're trying to find the next Dan Marino, and every quarterback knows that, right? And if you watch like a Monday Night Football or Sunday night game, I always get a picture of somebody that I coach, Pop Warner, or somebody, whatever. Hey, they take a snapshot of the TV screen of the like 17 quarterbacks or 20 whatever quarterbacks that have taken a snap since Dan Marino, and there I'm up there. So I get it, right? And that's just part of the game. When you decide to play quarterback, expectations, pressure, all those things are a part of the game. When you get picked to a place like New York, that just comes with the job. And I think for Zach, it's going to be about understanding it's not about him the second he shows up meeting all those expectations. It's not about him needing to be fully aware of the expectations that are already there. He already has that awareness, and he doesn't need to worry about that. It's not about adding more weight to your shoulders. It's about actually, how can I play free? How can I play as if there's not a weight there? That takes practice. That takes mental training. It's going to take some ups and downs. Quite honestly, he's going to need to experience some things early in his career that then when he steps back and reflects on those, he will grow as a human being and as a quarterback in the NFL, and he will be able to handle those better the next offseason, the next season. And nobody shows up to this league ready for all those things that they're going to face.
So the other part of Zach Wilson that interests me, that you've done a lot with him on, is that 1 year ago Zach Wilson was battling for the starting quarterback job at Brigham Young. He was in a 3-man competition for the starting quarterback job at Brigham Young. So take me into last offseason, the COVID offseason, when, as I wrote recently, 7 or 8 times he got in his car in Provo and drove to see you in Southern California for maybe a long weekend or maybe longer than that. But, that's how desperate he was to really make his mark. Yeah,
the season before he was the guy, right? And it just didn't end like they wanted. They finished with a loss against San Diego State and a loss to Hawaii in a bowl game, right? So the coaches opened it back up. The cool thing is the way that Zach approached everything when COVID hit. It was the first time, and this doesn't ever happen in college, where the players, they can't be there. So what he did was he said, I'm going to take full advantage of this opportunity. I want to be there as much as I can to improve the most I can. And one aspect of this that sometimes gets forgotten is that heading into his sophomore year, it was all about rehabilitation from a shoulder surgery. The year going into his junior year, he was healthy, and he got to really push himself. But you're right, there was a quarterback competition. The coaches made it that way. And during our workouts, the emphasis was on improvement. The emphasis was on the things that he could utilize from his experience to make better decisions, to recognize, hey, I am a really good athlete, but I don't always need to lean on that so much. What are some things that I can improve on so that as I move in the pocket, I don't escape one pressure leading into another? All those were things that were set for him to just play a solid, successful season. So these things that are taking place, it's really that old adage of if you just put your head down and work, good things happen. And that's quite frankly what Zach did. He was not concerned with the NFL status. He wasn't concerned with what list he was on, a Mel Kiper list or a Todd McShay list. That was so far distant for him. It was something in the future. He just wanted to have a good junior year and put his head down and work. And now all of these things that are happening are really the fruits of those labors.
What's he like as a student?
A student of the game, he's phenomenal. Yeah. He's phenomenal. Loves the game, loves to study it, soaks it up. I mean, he always has that dang iPad with him. He's always just like watching tape. He just loves it. When I would spend time over at his place when he was training here and he had an off afternoon, it was, hey, let's spend some time together. And when I would walk in the house, the iPad was already out. And I know it wasn't there to prepare for our meeting, like, oh, hey, I got it out because I know we're going to watch. It's because it was already out. That's just the way that he is. So, whatever team gets him, they're going to love the student of the game that he is.
Did you know that when he was on some of these trips to see you, that in his off time when he was there, he's doing DoorDash to make money? Yeah,
he told us. He would tell us some of the stories that he had of DoorDashing. There's some pretty interesting stories of people that DoorDash. But yeah, he would tell us, he's like, hey, I'm down here to train, and that's my number one reason why I'm down here. And when I have time off, I don't have like a set job back in college, so it always helps for me to make a little bit of cash here and there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to DoorDash. And he would say, yeah, I DoorDashed for like 5 or 6 hours last night. The funny thing is there's a lot of people in Southern California right now that receive their DoorDash from the quarterback from wherever he ends up,
I forget. I think it was the offensive coordinator at Brigham Young told me that one guy last year when I guess during the summer when they were practicing, that Zach would do it at night, after practice when he had a couple hours in Provo. And one guy, I guess, one time said to him, "Oh my God, I just got my dinner from Zach Wilson. He's our quarterback."
Yeah. No, I think, Zach's really good at time management. He really knows how to put the most important things in first. And, for him, it's football all of the time. And he makes sure that he takes time for that. And then when he doesn't do football time, he's not just like loafing around, killing time. He's a very productive human being. A lot of that is driven by his own productivity and efficiency in sports, but it carries into other things. So for him, he was like, it's time unoccupied with anything football related. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to go make some money. He's a thoughtful kid. He always wants to do nice things for his family members. I know there was a few circumstances where he was earning money to get some stuff for his parents. I know also he's a thoughtful kid in terms of recognizing how much his dad does for him and that his dad was covering a lot of these bills. And he felt like, I want my dad to know that I'm grateful. And so, I can buy my own flight. I can facilitate it so my dad doesn't have to, buy my flight. And I want to, buy my own flight if I fly out here. I mean, he's a really good, solid kid. And, it doesn't surprise me some of those stories of just when I hear from other people of that he would do the same thing in Provo. That's just the type of person he is.
When you think of him being in New York with the Mike LaFleur offense, which is a lot of, obviously, it's, he's worked with Kyle Shanahan a lot. What do you think of Zach's fit in that offense? And from what you know of the conversations and the Zoom meetings between Zach and the Jets, how are they going?
I think it's a perfect fit. When you look at what Zach brings to the table and what this is going to go all the way to Mike, what Mike wanted in that offense when he was utilizing it in Denver, in Washington, the things that he feels.
Mike Shanahan, you're talking about.
Mike Shanahan. What makes that offense the best? Remember, Kyle's a believer in his dad's system. Kyle's coached in that system for a long, long time, so he knows exactly what works. And then you got underneath him, right? Then there's Matt LaFleur, there's Mike LaFleur, there's Sean McVay, and they all recognize what works best at offense. And I think if I could have handpicked from the offenses that I know well, which one would fit Zach best, it would absolutely be that one. He brings such a skill set to be able to get out on the edges, to be used in the keeper game, the play pass game. He can drive balls in very small space off unique platforms as he's moving. He's also a guy that can recognize a coverage and then be able to throw two throws almost within the same hitch because of how he gets this great shoulder turn and flickiness. So I think it's a great fit. From my understanding, the interviews are going really good with teams. The Jets are getting an opportunity to know Zach as best they possibly can outside of, being able to do a private workout, right? Like normal years, they would be able to fly all their guys out there, sit down with them in a room. Well, they don't get that this year. So these Zoom meetings, it's a huge part of, if they choose to pick Zach, this is how they're going to get to know him. And so far, it sounds like they're going really well.
What's the culture shock aspect of it going to be like for him?
We've talked about that, about the culture shock and how different it is. Look, it's just a reality of the United States, right? There's different areas of the United States that are different. I've shared with him my experience of growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, and going to Utah, and all of a sudden I'm in Miami, right? And there's a difference there. We've talked about what it's going to be like for him if, in fact, the New York Jets do select him. He's been to New York before, he's been to Jersey before, but he was going as not living there, right? He's there to visit New York as a tourist. This time it's going to be different, right? And we also talk about, if they do select him, just how different it's going to be in the media. Provo, Utah to New York is a very big difference in terms of how the media covers their football team. Something that I think BYU does a great job of is there's a quarterback tradition there because of the guys that have gone before, the Gifford Nilsons, the Mark Wilsons, the Steve Youngs, the Jim McMahons, the Ty Detmers, Steve Sarkisian. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in there. So there's an expectation that I believe when you play football at BYU, it does prepare you for the expectations of the NFL. But that being said, it is magnified when you get to the NFL. Those media markets are bigger. The intensity of the way that they've, maybe you can say, scrutinized the quarterback, it is different. But I think that he'll be well prepared for that. There will be a culture shock. There will be a shock of him of being so far from home. He's a family kid, grew up in Draper, went to BYU. He's very tight with his siblings, with his parents, and it'll be the first time that he's a long ways away. But I think, for any young man, those opportunities when you leave your family and you really grow are great for your personal development. And I believe that he'll be able to mature in a lot of areas, and it'll benefit him as he goes to lead a team, wherever that is. So I think outside of football, it'll be a great experience. Within football, if it is the New York Jets, I think it's a great fit and a great opportunity for him to grow because, all those guys that come into the league, they do need to grow into NFL starting quarterbacks, into leaders of an NFL franchise. I don't believe there's very many guys that just walk in off the college campus and show up to their pro team and ready for all that.
Let's talk about Justin Fields for a minute. I'm really interested in him. And look, John, I'm not a big college football watcher, but I watched Ohio State Clemson. And I was watching the game because I really wanted to see this matchup of quarterbacks. And it wasn't much of a matchup. Justin Fields was the best quarterback by far that day for a lot of different reasons. But what impressed me so much about him is how he took one of the all-time shots that a quarterback can take in the middle of the second quarter. And he goes out of the game. He gets hit in the ribs. I said, oh my God, that guy he's not coming back. He misses one play, comes back, throws 4 touchdowns after that, outplays Trevor Lawrence, and obviously Ohio State wins the game. I was really, really impressed that day. And fast forward to the controversy of a couple of weeks ago when, does Justin Fields love football? Is he a hard worker? And I was thinking to myself, that just really doesn't sound like the guy who I'm watching, right? The guy who I watched on TV. But tell me about him as a person, a worker, and what you've seen in him in the time that you've worked with him.
Well, you're absolutely right. He was a warrior that night against Clemson, and he battled continuously after that. most people won't know this because they didn't have an opportunity post-January right after those games to be around him, but we did here. He still was unable to be 100% for weeks after that last game that he played in. That's how severe that rib injury was. That's how, the things that he played through. When somebody plays that way, that shows just how dedicated they are to their craft, to their team, to being a competitor, right? Like, to me, when I see that, I think ultimate competitor. That's what NFL teams are looking for. They want somebody that wants to go out and compete so bad that no matter what shot they take, no matter how bad it hurts, or even if they themselves know that they're no longer at 100% and they're out there at 82%, they're walking out on the field because they want to be out there. So in my experience with Justin here in California, he's been great. He's shown all the traits that you need to have to be an NFL starting quarterback. He's shown the work ethic. He's shown the desire to stay late. I mean, there are so many days that we finish the throwing session, he walks over, grabs a drink, grabs his football, walks right back out and says, hey, I just want to hit a few more things. I just want to feel this. I want to work on that. And I had times with him that he said, hey, can I come in on the off day and work on some extra things? Absolutely. Hey, I just got this, information from this team. I want to go over it. Can you come help me go over it so I can learn it the best I possibly can? To me, that demonstrates somebody that has a great desire to want to be the very best he can and that does absolutely love the game. And I think for whatever team picks Justin, I think that they're going to love the way that he approaches the things that he does and the way that he approaches improving in his craft.
That is a good summation of him, and I appreciate you doing that. What would you say that is important for him at this pro day tomorrow?
I think it's be himself, right? It may seem like this pro day is there to convince somebody that's on the fence of a decision. But to me, that's not what it's about. To me, I look at it as there were so many pro days that all happened so fast. And these teams could only send so many people, right? So they had to pick and choose on that day of who went. Well, there's no individual workouts. There's no private workouts. What about these teams that really want to dive deeper into somebody, but they don't have the opportunity? To me, it's just about another opportunity in a very strange year to give more teams a chance to see you. So I just think for him, and we talked, it's just about going out and doing like what you did on your pro day. You don't have to do anything different. You put together a great pro day. You've worked extremely hard over these last couple of months. You had a great 2 years at Ohio State. You went to the playoffs every year. Like, teams have already seen you on tape enough. All they want to do is they want to stand in the same building as you, see you 10, 15 yards away, and watch you do what you do. That's all you got to do. So to me, that's it. One, like a throw here or there is not going to convince somebody that's sitting on the fence. It's about just them getting to see you live.
I wonder, when you look at his style of play, is there an offense among the teams, like San Francisco, maybe Atlanta, Carolina, New England, Chicago, when you think of maybe even Denver, when you think of all those teams that might be in contention to take him, does anything jump out to you as a team that would be a particularly good match?
Well, I see a similar skill set, like some of the things that I described that offense likes, the Kyle Shanahan, what they're going to be running in Atlanta. Here's the thing. There are quarterbacks that have skill sets that can fit in a lot of offenses, right? What that quarterback needs is time to develop within that offense. Are there some elements of the offense that we've talked about that I think is just a simple, easy fit for the things that Justin brings to the table? Absolutely. But because he has so many skills, there's a lot of offenses that would love to have a player like that. I think that there's some teams that, maybe they didn't think a guy like Justin would be, in that spot where they could draft him. Maybe they're sitting at those picks between like 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Like, well, we never even thought we would get a potential for a Justin Fields, but maybe however it shakes down, there's a chance. Or maybe you have some teams sitting like a New England or a Denver who says, can we bump up a couple spots to make sure we get him? Absolutely. Do I think he could still be a great fit in those offenses? I do. When I see a Kyle Shanahan offense and the coaches that coach within that system at other organizations, I see so many things that Justin does, and I say, wow, that fits those offenses really well. And those coaches, when they watch him on tape, when they watch him throw, they can see things that would be, great utilized in their offense.
Yeah. Trey Lance is interesting to me because obviously, he's played only one game last year, and it's at a Division I AA level, whatever it's called now. And I wonder, when you have gotten to work with him, does he seem precocious, a little bit beyond his years? Does he seem like he's ready to take this huge jump, even though he probably hasn't had the sort of requisite time in the saddle at that level that you'd like?
I love the energy that he brings. You can feel his desire, his drive. I wasn't the one that got to train him leading up to his pro day. Yeah. So I've been able to be around him for a few weeks. In my time with him, the word that I use is eager. You can sense and feel his eagerness in everything that he does. He recognizes the position that he's in terms of opportunity, and also in terms of the reality that he's coming from, right? He recognizes the time that he spent. This is how many games he played. He can't change anything about that right now. He missed pretty much his entire season last year, not by his choice. The one game that he played in was pretty much because he worked really hard to get that game. I know that if he could have played the whole season, he would have absolutely done it, right? So it's one of those things that, unfortunately, the circumstances that the world was in last year took games away from Trey. There's nothing he can do about that. But he's eager for the opportunity that's in front of him. He works really, really hard. I love the attitude that I feel around him when he gets on the board, when he watches tape. To me, you can say, oh, well, does he have all the experience that he should have? Of course, you can jot down a number and say, hey, it'd be great if he had this many starts. He doesn't. Does that mean that he's not going to be ready? Does that mean that because of that he's a leg behind some of these other people? Who can say that, right? Sometimes you see quarterbacks that wait their time, buy their time. Mac Jones had to wait his time, has played one season at Alabama, and is now going to be a top pick, right? So you can't necessarily say that it's all just by the number of starts. But to me, I like his approach. I believe that if you want to be successful in the NFL, you have to have a process, approach, a mindset, and the people around you need to feel that. And I absolutely do feel that from Trey every time I'm around him.
Give me an idea of how much time during an average day you spend on the phone with NFL coaches, GMs, assistant coaches, who are trying to really do deep downloads into the players you're working with.
I'm guessing my wife would be the one that would probably actually be able to nail that on the head, because there are a lot of times where she's just like, you are on the phone all day long when you're not at work. I mean, look, for me, because I love football, right, and I love those conversations, they just roll. But, this time of year, it happens a lot. We've been fortunate, here at 3DQB to have the opportunity to train a bunch of guys. We haven't mentioned them yet, but Kyle Trask and KJ Costello are two more quarterbacks that we've been training. We've had Kyle from the get-go in January all the way up. And there's a lot of teams that have reached out to me on his behalf. So there's a lot. Yes, you're right. I mean, most of the times that I come off the field, I'm usually on the field from about 7 a.m. to a little after 12 or 1 o'clock. And when I step off the field, I always have either voicemails, text messages, all that stuff to get back to. And quite honestly, I don't always have enough time in the day to get back to all of them. But it's exciting because it's all for these guys, right? Like, these guys have worked hard. They've earned that. They've earned those opportunities for teams to be calling and saying, hey, tell me about this guy. And it's great for me to have an opportunity to share all the positives. And I'm very real with these coaches, right? Like, I want to see all those guys, Zach, Justin, Trey, Kyle, KJ. I want to see all of them succeed. But I know, because of my experience, not all 5 of those guys are going to go to perfect situations for them. Not all of those guys are going to go to great playoff caliber teams. The reality is they have a journey ahead of them. And the more that I can help those coaches know who they really are, the things that they're good at, the things they need to work on, how, if I could keep coaching them, what are some of the things that I've seen, and how I can give that to their next coach that will help speed up that process. That's, to me, the huge value in my time talking to coaches, to GMs, to scouting departments. That's going to help them develop their players. I want to see all of them go somewhere where they can be developed like they need to be.
Kyle Trask is sort of an interesting prospect just from this standpoint. I've just assumed all along that, he's probably going to be, I don't know, low 2, 3, somewhere in there. I don't know. But last week, 2 teams said, hey, I've heard there's a couple of teams down low in the first round or trading back up from high in the second round might be coming back to get Kyle Trask. And I said, wow, first round, 6 quarterbacks in the first round. I mean, you don't know. It's kind of funny. I did an exercise last week that, I looked at how many quarterbacks are getting picked, like number one overall this year, and comparing them to a generation or two ago. I mean, when Boomer Esiason was drafted in the NFL in 1984, he was the 37th overall pick, and he was the first quarterback picked. And the next year, when Randall Cunningham was the first quarterback pick, he was the 38th pick. And so you're talking about life has changed drastically to people. The reason why I think, John, it's fair to say the reason you have a job and the reason that your phone is ringing for 16 hours a day, it's because of the desperation of NFL teams to find that guy.
Yeah, I think they're looking. I think, like you and I have talked before, this is a really interesting year for the number of quarterbacks that are either exiting the league, changing teams. The number of, it's really a changing of the guard in the NFL for a lot of these franchises and the quarterbacks that they've been used to having. I think here's the thing that always comes into quarterbacks and when they're picked. It comes to the team, right? If you go to all 32 teams draft board, they're probably going to have different orders for all their guys, right? And so really what it comes down to is that guy that they've had their eye on there? Or do they have a higher grade for somebody that they didn't anticipate to be there and he's still there? Or is there somebody where they say, we don't want to wait, we see a lot of value, maybe we can jump up and get him? I think that the change in the rookie deals has impacted that. I think with also the size of contracts being signed now by quarterbacks for their second deal, with how big they are, that also impacts it. There's the business side of pro football that is always there, where teams have to try to put together the best team they can within a budget. And so if you're looking at where's the most value I can get in a quarterback, nowadays it's in a young quarterback that hasn't second contract yet. So if you can go reach up and grab a guy that you believe can be your starting quarterback and do it as a rookie and have him for a handful of years before you have to pay him that really big second contract, that's a huge value to your team.
John Beck of 3DQB, really appreciate you taking the time and educating us about this fun business and this very, very fun draft that's going to come up on the weekend of April 29th. Thanks so much.
Yep, you're welcome, Peter. Great talking to you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.